With this puffy foam design, it does look pretty good as far as the settings go. There are some things that I would like to do to the design to make sure that it is optimized for puffy foam. One thing that I do like to do is actually break apart the letter, especially if we have stitches going in different directions. Let's go ahead and zoom in on the design. I just chose the zoom in tool, left click, hold and drag, then right click to deselect. We can see in the design we do have the corner that we were speaking of earlier, but that's not what I really want to focus on at this point. I'd like to focus on this section right here where we have stitches going in one direction and stitches on the long part of the design going in another direction. What we need to do here is we actually need to separate it so that we don't have any traveling stitches going between the two parts of the design. So first of all, what we will do is I will go into the view outline. When I left click on view outline, you can see the outline of the letter. I'm going to right click inside that letter to select it, and then I'm going to choose my zoom in tool, left click on zoom in, and left single click. I'll right click to deselect. With it selected, I am going to go into outline at the top, left click on that, and scroll down to divide with line. Left click on divide with line. When I choose that, my cursor turns into a little crosshair. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to left click on one side of the segment, left click on the other side of the segment. So what I'm doing here is I'm defining the cut line that I'd like to make. This is going to cut it into two sections. I hit enter on my keyboard, press escape to get out of the tool, right click off to the side. Now if I right click inside this segment, it is one part. Right click inside this segment, it is another part. What I'd like to do here is right click and then go into outline and edit outline mode. In here I can see that sometimes when I do make a cut line, I don't make it absolutely perfect. So I'm going to take these nodes that are in here, right click on them and delete the point. Right click, delete this point, right click, delete this point, and right click and delete that point. That way I can make sure it's completely straight. The second thing I'd like to do is right click inside this section and overlap it just a bit into the longer section. Right click off to the side to deselect. So now when I do that, I do have the two sections. These are now separated from each other and they can have their own settings. And the more important thing is that they will have a trim in between the two. So I'll go ahead and hit go, and we can see that this section right here is its own piece, this section right here is its own piece, and you can see after we did that the actual corner actually changed on us as well. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is capping the edges here. And then we'll go in and we'll actually change the settings to what I think is important. So when we cap off the edges, as we were talking about before, you can see that we have our stitches going up and down, but there's nothing going left to right inside here to cut the foam. So a couple of things. We're going to zoom in on this object, and we're going to use this shape to make a cap. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to right click inside the area. I will then go to edit copy and edit paste. You can see it'll select, or it'll make another area right on top of the original area, and it's exactly the same. So I'm going to take the underneath area, which is number 3, and I'm going to go to the outline view, and in the outline view what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this into the section for capping. So in order to do that, we'll go to outline, left click on outline, go down to divide with a curve, and in here I will left click, and what we'll do is I'm going to come just to the inside here. Now even though we chose divide with a curve, what we're using this for is to actually make cut points, multiple cut points, but with straight lines. So I'm going to come kind of at this corner here. I'm going to left click, make sure we start outside the area. I'm going to come, at an angle here, left click, when I make left clicks, it's going to make a corner point. I'm going to come across, left click, and come down across this corner as well, and left click. So I have to make sure that I'm outside each of the, I have to make sure I'm outside the area to make that cut line. When I'm done making my 4 points, I hit enter on my keyboard, press escape to get out of the tool. I'm going to hold my control key down and right click inside, and actually what I have to do is I have to hide this area because it's on top. I'm going to hold my control key, right click inside, and then I'm going to control delete the other section. I got rid of the other section because I don't need it anymore. I made the cap, so I carved it out of the original section. Let's go ahead and generate our stitches, and actually what it does is it does a nice satin stitch. I'm going to go to my angles and make sure that my angles are going to go in the direction I need it to go, left and right in a sense, and this is going to stitch before my the top of it. So you can see number 3 is this capping, number 4 is the top. So let's go ahead, I turn that back visible, and we are going to go ahead and do the capping for the other part of the F. So let's go ahead and select it. I'll go ahead and choose zoom selected object, left click. We are going to edit, copy, and edit, paste. So it pastes on top. Actually what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make that invisible just by left clicking on that eyeball. I'm going to choose the underneath part. We're going to zoom in on where I need to cap it. So on this section right here, right click to deselect. I will go now to view, view outline, go up to outline, and divide with a curve. So even though we're using divide with a curve, we're making corner points, and divide with a curve actually allows me just to make multiple points. Divide with a line only allows me to make 2 points. So I'm going to start outside the corner, left click, I'm going to come in just a little bit, left click, I'll do another left click and come outside the corner and left click, hit enter. Then I'll press escape to get out of the tool. I'll go to view and navigator, which is like my picture in picture here, and I'll bring that down here. I am not in the tool anymore, so I'll go to outline. We'll go to divide with a curve, come here, left click, left click, left click, and left click, hit enter, press escape to get out of the tool. I will go ahead and close out the navigator, and I will zoom all design, right click off to the side, right click in this middle section point. I do have that F, that other part of the F invisible, so it is selecting the correct area, and I'll do a control delete. So now let's go ahead and generate the stitches. I do have the 2 caps here. Now let's go in and optimize these areas. First of all, we want this part of the F, the cap, as well as the horizontal part. We want that to stitch first. So I'm going to left click inside frame number 4, hold my control key, left click inside frame number 5, and drag it up underneath between number 1 and 2. Then I have my 2 caps, and then I have the cover stitch there. Let's turn on that other section of the F here, and now let's go in and optimize these settings. So here's the cap. First of all, I want it just actually what I'm going to do is turn off number 3 so we can actually see what's going on here. I do want to optimize it just like I would for puff. So let's go ahead and go in, and we will select the area with a right click, or you can select it over here with a left click. We'll then go to the stitch settings, and in the stitch settings we do not want underlay, and actually I want to bring down the pull compensation, and the reason is I don't want it to stick too far outside of this other area because it's going on underneath. So I'm going to make it 0.2, and I am in millimeters. I'm going to go into the satin stitch. I'm actually going to override this density setting to about 0.16. I feel that's pretty good. And then we'll also deselect auto stitch shortening. Let's go ahead and apply that and press OK. When we do that, we do have the in and out points, and I do want them at opposite ends so that I don't have any travel stitches. So we'll go ahead and hit go right there. And you can see that I've got no travel stitches. What this is going to do, it's going to cut that foam right in there. And then let's go ahead and turn this area visible. Now I can see my out point is here. So we can actually have no trim in between the two and have the in point of this section up here because it's right next to the out point. There's no traveling really. So we'll go to number 3. There's my in point. Here's the out point. We will go into our stitch settings. Let's optimize it again for the satin. We're going to go in no underlay. In the pull compensation tab, I'm actually going to increase it just a little bit to 0.5. I'll go to the satin tab at the top. We do not want stitch shortening. I'm going to bring that down to 0.16. And actually, one thing that we can do is, let's go back to the basic tab. We will go ahead and select an underlay. With the underlay, if we go to the underlay tab, we can see what's selected right now is the zigzag. Well, we don't want that because it's going to lay down the foam. So we're going to take that zigzag and bring it over to the right hand side to the available mode. I'll go ahead and left click on this arrow. So now we have no underlay. So if I hit apply, you're going to see we have no underlay. But I'm going to go ahead and choose an edge and put that in, because what that will do, that will actually help cut my foam a little bit. So with an edge underlay, it's going to go just inside this blue and white flashing line, and that's what this margin is. That's 0.5 millimeters away from this blue and white flashing line. I'm actually going to bring that down to 0.3. Let's go ahead and hit apply. Now you can see the edge underlay just to the inside of that blue and white flashing line. I can even bring it closer. Let's bring it to 0.2. Let's apply that, and it's getting a little bit closer to that edge. The other thing I'm going to do is bring that maximum step down. By bringing the maximum step down, I'm going to make those stitch penetrations closer to each other, which will aid in the cutting of the foam. And this goes down before our cover stitch goes down. So I'm actually going to make that point at 2 millimeters. Let's go ahead and apply that. When I do that, it's actually, you don't see much of a change, but what it does do is actually increase your stitch count. We'll go ahead and hit OK. Right click off to the side, make sure and generate our stitches. So this section right here is optimized. Now let's go to the other sections. Because all of these sections will have the same, the two caps will have the same settings, and then this will have the same setting, or this will have its own settings. We are going to choose 4 and 5. So I'll hold, I left click on 4, hold my control, left click on 5. Let's go ahead and zoom the whole design. So those two are selected. We will then go to our stitch settings, deselect the underlay. I'll go to the pull compensation tab. I'll bring that down to 0.2. Go to my satin stitch. I'll bring the density down to 0.16, and I'll deselect the auto stitch shortening. We'll go ahead and hit OK, and then we'll go. I'll right click off to the side. I'm going to turn this area invisible, and you can see those travel stitches there. So first of all, we are going to have 3 stitch, which is this part of the F. I'm going to insert a trim so that it does not travel between 3 and 4. Same thing with 5. I'll insert a trim there. The next thing I want to choose, or I want to change or look at, are my in and out points. So we'll right click on this top one here. I'll zoom in on that selected object. Let's go ahead and change our in and out points. I'll hit go. And we'll also look at the stitch angles. And actually what I'll do here is have that stitch angle kind of go in. So you can see that it's kind of coming in at an angle there. And one thing I didn't change was this one here. So let's go ahead and select this one. Let's go and zoom that selected object. Let's go to the stitch settings, and I'd rather have those angles kind of coming inward rather than straight back and forth. I'll take this one, control delete, I'm sorry, delete that, not control delete. If you hit control delete, it'll delete the whole thing. and then we'll go ahead and go, and looks much better that way. So we have the in and out points and everything optimized for this first cap over here. Let's go to the second cap. Let's go ahead and zoom the selected object. We'll change the in and out points and just left clicking, holding and dragging. Then I'll go to my stitch angles. Let's go ahead and move these points or the angles, just left click, hold and drag. And let's go ahead and generate the stitches. They have the same settings. Now I want to realize where my out point is because I can put the end point of this part of the F right there without having a trim in between. So now we'll go ahead and turn on that part of the F. I'll right click off to the side, right click on it. I do have my end point here. I just moved it over a little bit. Let's go ahead and zoom this section, and we want the out point up here. Because what it's going to do, it's going to go ahead and travel in one fluid motion without having, travel stitches. So let's change the settings in this guy. And with it selected, we're going to go to the stitch settings. We're then going to go to the underlay tab. We're going to take that zigzag out of there. So let's go ahead and select zigzag, bring it over to the right, take the edge and bring it over to the left. So that's what's going to be selected. We're going to change that maximum step to 2. And we're going to change the margin to 0.2. The next thing we're going to do is go to the pull compensation. We're going to increase it to 0.5, and then we're going to go to the satin stitch, deselect the auto stitch shortening, change the density to 0.16. We're going to go ahead and press OK, right click off to the side, generate our stitches, and now you can see, let's go ahead and, I'll undo that. Go ahead and zoom in. And you can see I've got no stitching underneath, but I do have that edge stitching. Like I said, it's going to help me cut that, that foam there. So we can also go in and look at our angles. I'm going to change this angle just slightly, so it's not as much of a, a change. Let's right click, go. Let's go ahead and zoom this whole object. I can see that it's going to stitch very nice. So I'm going to right click off to the side. Let's go ahead, file, save as, and we'll go ahead and save this as the new design and press OK. So if we look at it in 3D, we can see that even though we have the stitching going all the way across here and across here and across here, we have the caps underneath. For this corner, I do want it to stitch like this because it'll help cut the foam at that corner. Now you could, if you wanted to, cut the F here across and do the same type of thing that you saw in this section here. But I think what we have here is going to be, it's going to look nice. But if you do have any problems or any questions, feel free to contact me. I'm here at the office, 877-724-6400, or you can email me at andrea@zskmachines.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.